Hi, everybody, and welcome to the sponsor track 1 here at Swiss Cyberstorm. My name's Catherine Chapman, your moderator for the day in this room, and I'm very pleased to be announcing our next speaker, who will be discussing a very timely, a very sexy topic, ransomware, but even more fascinating, focused on Switzerland, because I personally don't hear a lot about ransomware and how it impacts this country. So without further ado, please let's welcome Stephan Berger.
Great.
He said say burger, and I said I'm not saying that. Who is the Senior Cybersecurity Analyst at InfoGuard AG. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that lovely introduction. So it's a fast-paced track. I don't have the time to tell you everything about all the artifacts I will presenting you, but we'll publish a blog post in upcoming days or weeks. So make sure that you just watch our blogs. With no further ado, I will start with my presentation. So we worked a lot of ransomware cases this year. Our schedule was really packed on a weekly basis. Companies all around Switzerland and Europe got hit frequently with ransomware. So the question is, how does the attackers penetrate our networks? How they get in the first place? Have a look at the picture here. This is a kind of a fortress with two small bridges. This is pretty guarded, the fortress, but nevertheless our networks are also guarded. How an attacker got into our networks in the first place. So what we see quite often is phishing and malicious documents which were used by attackers to penetrate our networks. Those phishing attempts and malicious documents were a hot topic when I started 10 years ago my cybersecurity career, and it's still a hot topic to this day. And have a look at the screenshot here I'm presenting. It's transfer 24 and it's written, hey, you will receive a parcel. Click on that link to receive the parcel. So with all the training our employees are receiving, why are people still clicking on that links? In fact, the attacker have sent those phishing attempts to a company, and after sending the link, they phoned that employee of the company and they tell him, hey, I've just sent you an email. You will receive a parcel. You have to click on that link to receive the parcel. And the person who called the employee of that firm was speaking clearly and without accent German. So this could be a really targeted attack. But of course, the employee clicked the link and installed the software, and the employee saw that pretty sign, that pretty software, tracked your parcel, track your package here. But of course, if you maybe guessed by this time, it was not really a parcel which you were tracking, so it was deploying ransomware in the end. And another thing is here. So this was, compared to the other attempt, a really sloppy attempt. So I have made some edits. Please check and click on this link here. Nobody sane would click on that link, right? But the attackers compromise another mailbox from another company and use that mailbox to send a phishing email to another company, to another employee, which they frequently exchange email together. So for the receiver of that phishing attempt, it was not clear that this document here on OneDrive was tampered with. And of course, the employee of the company which was targeted downloaded the document and also infected the company. So this one, even without enormous training efforts for your employees, you cannot be sure that not somebody will click on that links, which surely or clearly show these two phishing attempts. Another hot topic, and this year was crazy with vulnerabilities, as you might know. Starting in March, we saw uprising and a steep peak of Exchange vulnerabilities up to the States. So we worked in March. It was really, our schedule was so full. We worked like crazy for the next weeks because so much companies around Switzerland and around Europe got hit with the Exchange vulnerability. So the attackers, what they did, they managed to get remote code execution on the Exchange servers, and they placed Webshells on those web servers. Microsoft, in fact, released a tool, a scanning tool, which companies could run to find Webshells on your Exchange servers. And we had a couple, or even in fact a lot of customers who called us and said, hey, we run the tool from Microsoft and it haven't found a Webshell. Are we sure, or are we safe? Could you check, please? Do an additional check of our Exchange server, which we did. And in fact, the screenshot here, have a look at the orange circle. So you see there that an attacker, or we're looking here at an infected Exchange server, because in the OWA path, the external available path from the Exchange server. So the attacker dropped a web shell there, and the customer told us, "Hey, I run an AV scan, I run the Microsoft security scanner on this web server, and it haven't found a web shell. But clearly there is a web shell." So I sent this screenshot to the customer and said, "Hey, you have a web shell there. Even the Microsoft security tool haven't found something." And on the next, and the client answered me and said, "No, I opened Explorer, I went to the folder you told me, and there is no web shell." And I said, "Oh, sure, there is one. But have a look here. It's maybe not so, I hope you can see it. He ran the dir command, so that's listing of a directory. The web shell is not there. Why is the web shell not there? See here, the next command he ran were dir with a hidden flag. So the web shell, oh, suddenly there, there it is." And even here on the last paragraph, you see the delete command is not working on the web shell. So even if you try to delete that web shell, it will not work. So it was pretty clever from the attacker, because it tampered with the web shell. So he modified the file that you cannot change it or delete it. So maybe that was the trick that the Microsoft scanner was not able to delete the file. So this gives company a false sense of security if your scanner doesn't find it and your IV doesn't pick it up. It means you cannot be sure that you are not breached if you're applying patches or scanning your systems. The next thing is true about vulnerabilities, we worked a couple of cases because of that Fortinet VPN credentials leak. Please have a look at the last paragraph or the last sentence. It's highlighted in bold. Even if the devices has since been patched, if the password's not reset, you might still be vulnerable. And it was true for a couple of cases we worked on. Companies haven't changed their passwords frequently, which led inevitably to a compromise of the full network. Another hot topic, not only ransomware is a hot topic, but cloud is as well a hot topic. We see a common shift to the cloud, so companies are moving their perimeter to the cloud. What we are seeing here is a screenshot of the non-vulnerability scanner showdown. We work on a case where a company were encrypted or breached because they set up a virtual machine in Azure. They set up that machine to give a third-party company access to their internal network. What that company haven't realized at the moment, they're exposing a remote desktop port. We see that here on the port is 3389, the common remote desktop port. So attackers, of course, they saw that port as well exposed to the internet, and they started brute forcing the password, the administrator password. And guess what? They were able to log into that network. So they breached immediately, or they were able to log in as administrator on your Azure virtual machine with administrator right. They were able to dump the credentials, and because that Azure machine was network joined with your on-premise network connection, led to a full compromise of the network. So to sum up that chapter, I cannot stress that enough to all my clients. Multi-factor all the things. It might sound, yeah, you've heard that all the time, you heard that like 100 times, but it's one of those key things you can make to secure your environment. So when you have a VPN access, use a second factor. If you are exposing remote desktop services to the internet, use a second factor. It really might save your network from being compromised. The second thing is, here, I cannot stress enough, just stating from the Exchange vulnerability, assume breach. We had so much clients which called us and said, "Hey, I patched my Exchange server," but we found still web shells on those web servers. So the point here is, I'm stressing out, is even if you applied your patches, you cannot be sure that you are not compromised in the first place. So you need experts which can say you, incident responder or forensic analyst, which can say you are not breached. You as a system administrator, as the example I showed you with the hidden web shell show clearly, you have not the ability, maybe not the knowledge, to really say your system is secure or not. And the last thing I point out here in that is because you are moving your your machines or your systems to the cloud, use the cloud or a command line access to the cloud to make sure that you are aware which ports you are exposing to the internet. So all the major cloud providers, they have command line accesses which you can use to scan your perimeter or to make you a weekly or a daily report what you are exposing to the internet. So after attackers breach our perimeters, of course, they want to maintain a persistent access so that they survive a reboot, or if you are applying patches or changing passwords, that they can come back again in your network. What we are seeing quite often is and also in a timely manner, after attackers breach perimeters and breach networks, they install legitimate remote desktop solutions inside your network on a couple of servers. So adversaries, they are using AnyDesk, TeamViewer, Atera, Splashtop, etc. to blend in with legitimate network traffic. So for a defender or for an antivirus solution, all these solutions which are named here on the slide, these are legitimate products. So how can you tell as a system administrator, this is an attacker? How can you tell as an antivirus solution, this is bad, this happened to be there? So also keep in mind, when you're doing incident response, that you are not only looking for the common ones like Copperstrike or MeterBreeder, but you assess the network in case of a breach for hidden backdoors. I call it in quotes hidden because all these backdoors are legitimate. The next thing is Copperstrike is all over the place. I'm sure everybody here heard the name Copperstrike. It's a pretty well-known attack framework which is nearly used in every case we worked on. The point here is on this slide, make use of freely available data, even if you don't have or your organization doesn't have a huge security budget, you still can profit from the information which is freely available on the internet. Use those freely available data to run through your proxy logs or your firewall logs. You might find an adversary inside your network before it's too late and attackers encrypted your network. So the point here is, monitor your networks for connections to remote desktop providers. Why is my server or even my domain controls connecting to AnyDesk or to Atera? Is this normal? Should that be? Probably not. And also use freely available data. On Twitter you find such huge lists of known Copperstrike servers, etc. Use that data. Use it daily or hourly to run it against your proxy server logs or to firewall logs. This information comes without additional costs, so you can really just benefit from those data. And also, if our incident responder or forensic analysts in the room, keep in mind that AnyDesk, TeamViewer, or potentially other remote desktop solutions are writing connection logs inside the installation folders. So when you are doing incident response, you might have a chance to find the real IP address from the adversary which were used to log into your system, or you can assess the breach, which user was breached. After setting up persistent and backdoors inside the network, what we see quite frequently, or it's maybe in every case we worked on, that the attackers starting to scan the network, to map out the network. Why? Because they want to find the juicy data. They want to find the finance share or the HR share, and they want to steal your data. We see here two known products. It's SoftPerfect Network Scanner and the Advanced IP Scanner, and which is kind of funny because attackers need to run those tools to find the juicy data, to find open shares inside your network. But by doing so, they give us as a defender or system administrator a chance to find them in our network, because we had more than one case where a savvy administrator noticed a peak on the CPU on a domain controller or on servers where nobody really is working at that time. So when your CPU goes up in the middle of the night on your domain controller, maybe it would be a good reason to have a look at the processes of that server. So we have a case once when an administrator looked at the logs or at the process and he saw, oh, somebody is scanning my network. So the point here is, maybe high CPU load could lead to the detection of an adversary inside your network. So keep that in mind. High CPU load is something you have to track carefully. And also for the forensicator and incident responder in the room, we also tracking soft perfect license file. If an adversary doesn't have the time or is not carefully removing his traces after scanning, we might have a chance to find a license file on the disk or on the server. You can use that license file to track adversaries throughout cases or throughout breaches. So you might have a chance, or legal enforcement have a chance to find the attackers or to find which person bought that license file in the first place. And the last point here is advanced IP scanner stores the last IP range he scans inside the registry. So this one is really a benefit for us defenders, because on the one hand, we know which user was used to scan the network, because if the registry entry is there inside the user hive, we know that user was breached and used by the adversaries to scan our network. And on the other hand, we know which IP ranges the attacker scanned. So we might find out what data they saw or what they saw in our network. After finding our juicy data, our finance share and our HR share, adversaries exfiltrating data. I'm sure most of you have heard of Yandex. It's a Russian upload provider, a Mega and Set. So all these major cloud providers are used just to steal data, and it's heavily used by attackers to move data outside of the network. Keep in mind, sometimes this is really an important part. Even if you're a forensicator or an incident responder, you might have a chance to find those credentials which the attacker used to move the data out of your network. So in more than one cases, we found the credentials, the username and the passwords which the attacker used to exfiltrate the data. So what you're looking at here is a screenshot of the Mega MZ platform, and this is exactly the data the attacker stole. So you might have a chance, keep on carving the file system for credentials, or maybe you find the credentials inside the memory. But nevertheless, it will give you an advantage when you're negotiating with the attackers and the attacker tell you, hey, I stole all of your data, and you have access to the stolen data. You can say, no way, I know what you did there. So what we are just make sure that you are monitoring, or even if you can, blocking all the connections to the known upload providers like Yandex or Mega. And it's a good thing if you are blocking those connections, monitoring those block connections, because when you see in your site your proxy logs, your domain controller or one of your servers is trying to connect to such an upload platform, it might give you a clue that somebody is trying to steal your data. And also keep in mind that you can carve out configuration files of those cloud exporters from memory or even from disk. Even if the file might be deleted on disk, you might have a chance to carve it out. This one is really important. Please keep that in mind when you're leaving the room. I would say like in 80, maybe 19% of all our cases, we saw that the antivirus picked one or maybe more steps of the attackers inside the network. But nobody was really paying attention to the antivirus logs of the companies. So this is really important. I've talked a lot with customers about AV logs, and they don't have the time, and I get that for sure. But if you're just taking one thing out of this room, when you see something here on the right side on the highly relevant page, make sure when you see something like Mimikatz, Meterpreter, password dump or so, please give us a call, or give whatever firm or security specialist you want to call, please give it a call. I find this page from Florian Roth, a known security researcher, valuable, highly recommended. To give you a glimpse, what we see sometimes is, this one is from a real incident. So it started in March, where Microsoft ATP picked up various alerts. You see that it's high, it's medium, it's all over the place. We see Mimikatz, we see password stealing from files. The sad thing is here, 5 days later, the attacker is still inside your network. So suspicious dumbbell behavior was prevented. So And the next thing is, on the same day, we see user account created under suspicious circumstances. And even 7 days after the first alarm or the first alert from Microsoft, we see that file backups were deleted. So we see the full chain here of a compromise, starting with the initial entry from the attacker, with the initial dumping of the credentials, leading all the way down to removing your backups and you removing your shadow credentials. And guess what happened next? Of course, the network was encrypted. So it's a pity you have the data. The organization had the data all in place to monitoring and to track that adversary inside your network. Nobody was paying attention. Always, or here are the key points, keep that in mind. Please, when you leave out that room, monitoring your AV logs, even if your people don't have the time, make sure you set up a keyword search like Mimikatz or Trojan or whatever, or dump. It might save your day in the long run, I can assure you that. The last thing is, when I'm doing incident response, in all my cases, in every company, in every network, I run a ping castle scan. So ping castle is a free software from a French researcher, and it will assess your Active Directory environment. And it will show you all the pain points in an understandable and in a readable way. So have a look at this slide. Why is this useful? When you are just doing, or when you are running ping castle and you're doing just one check, please check for stored passwords inside the registry. What we are looking here is stored passwords. So if you are familiar with Active Directory, every authenticated user inside your network must have access to the Active Directory share. So everybody in that domain can read the group's XML file. What we are looking here is, have a look at the username support. We, as an adversary on an attacker in the network, we can see the plain text password of that user support. And guess what? This user support is part of the domain administrator group. So even when you have only one infected computer inside your network, an adversary, an attacker can go from 0 to unallocated user, or from a low-priv user to domain administrator instantly, within minutes. So your network could burn down within an hour or so. Please keep that also in mind. This was a really fast-paced track. We will publish another blog post, like I said before, with additional artifacts, with registry keys, and all the links I presented here. If you have questions, please feel free to ask.
Any questions from anyone? Come on, there's got to be one question. There was so much information packed in there. Nothing? Nobody? Everyone wants to take... Oh, we've got one. If you don't mind saying your name and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Mirko. I'm from a company called Copperstrike. Probably know about it. Really fan of your infrastructure. So in the recent Exchange vulnerabilities, how fast did you see the attackers switch from ingress to the compromise of the network to ransomware? So to fully encrypting the network. How fast?
It was really fast. Also, the pace of exploitation was fast. So Microsoft released a patch on Tuesday evening, and we saw the first compromised Exchange servers on Wednesday morning. So the time from patch to exploitation was like, 6 to 7 hours, and instantly attackers are pushing then the ransomware, or they infected their like days. Mostly, maybe 24 hours, maybe not even a day.
Okay, it's in line with what we saw there.
Yeah. No, the march was crazy. I think you know what I'm talking about. Huh?
I think we have a couple more questions there at the back. Thank you for that one.
So you're asking to make it a couple, so I will make it a couple. I'm Stephan from CERN. Question number one, did you ever engage in negotiations with attackers?
Yes, we do.
What's your experience there? So,
a very professional basis. It works well. We don't recommend the company to pay, but if a company doesn't have other options, it runs, or it boils down to a negotiation.
So then my second question, how fast can you obtain 1 million Swiss franc in Bitcoins? Just a number.
It's the company. we have
No, I'm
we
asking
have-
seriously because
No,
I'm in contact with my banks. My banks denied.
No.
In the case for the playbook, they denied any involvement
We
in
have
those things.
We have a contract with a Swiss-based firm exchange, with a cryptocurrency exchange firm.
Yep.
So we also on the weekends or so. So we are capable of acquiring a lot of Bitcoin or even a high amount of Bitcoin within a short time frame.
Good, thank you. And since I have to ask a couple of questions, I ask the third one. Pink Castle. What about Bloodhound? You ever tried Bloodhound against an AD?
Sure.
So one or the other, both are complementary, or you would recommend one? You just mentioned one.
So when I'm doing incident response, I just use Pink Castle to get a shorter overview. We also do Active Directory analysis in depth. So I both use both tools then.
Thank you very much.
No more from the back there? No more questions? Thank you very much for them. And any others? Yeah, we have one right here in the...
One question is about the common behavior of ransomware. When they starting encrypting data and they are on the shared network, on a shared network drive, if there are other stations which are not infected, it's visible that something is going wrong, and the ransomware may be detected before a large volume of data are encrypted. So what is the strategy which have been observed in ransomware on the wild for having better chances to achieve a higher volume of encrypted data before being detected?
Serious question.
It's a big one.
No. So you're asking me for recommendations for a malware author, is it correct?
You have to know your enemy.
Yeah, sure. No. What we see quite often is adversary also, they pushing, so they compromise your domain, so they have domain administrator right. What we saw quite often is they modify the GPOs to disable all the antivirus products inside your network. So they disable Windows Defender, whatever you have in place. So that gives them an advantage. So you will not pick up antivirus. And most of our encryption process or the encryption process, they happen during the weekend when nobody's at work. So maybe it's you are right with that. So most of our companies, they come back Monday at work and they find, okay, our network is not working. I cannot log into my computer. So this gives the attacker advantages, of course.
We do have time for one more question or comment. Anyone have anything to add? No, we can maybe get to that lunch queue before the other rooms. So one last round of applause. Thank you for the presentation. InfoGuard will be out in the sponsor hall.